Most people think that VCarve can only do 2D designs and toolpaths, but that's actually not true. Today I'm going to show you how to create a fully custom 3D model of a snowman from scratch using nothing but the clip art that already comes with VCarve. No Aspire, no upgrades, and no extra purchases, just VCarve. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Kyle Ely and I teach CNC owners how to get more out of Vectric software and their CNC machines without the frustration. And in this video, I'm going to surprise a lot of people because VCarve actually has a way to stack and combine clip art to create simple 3D models. You just have to know how to do it. We're going to walk you through the exact steps to build this 3D snowman piece by piece using only the included clip art that's already sitting in your clip art library. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to build your own custom 3D shapes in VCarve, even though some people say it's not possible to make 3D models with VCarve. Let me show you exactly how this works. So here we are in VCarve, and this is what we're going to show you how to make. This is a custom 3D model entirely made with clip art within VCarve software. There's nothing we needed to import or purchase. Everything is already included with VCarve. So I'm going to show you how to make this custom snowman. And of course, feel free to follow along and customize it to your own liking as well. And before we get started, this is an example with VCarve. You're going to be very limited on some things you can do with 3D modeling. I'll show you some workaround tips along the way to help you with VCarve. However, if you do have Aspire, I also have this example here with a little bit more detail added, especially in the arms. You can see look a little bit more natural, like an actual stick. So if you want to learn how to do this with Aspire as well, we're not going to be covering that in this lesson, but if you do want to see a lesson on how to make something like this, let me know below in the comments. But with that said, let's start a brand new project of VCarve, and this could be VCarve Pro or VCarve Desktop, and you can even follow along if you have Aspire, but we're going to show you how to make a complete 3D snowman with only clip art objects. So let's get started. So here we are in VCarve, and I personally use Aspire, so I'm going to be using the trial version of VCarve just to show you you can even do it in a trial version if you want to just practice this before you actually purchase the software. But for this project, we are going to be setting up a single-sided project, and we're going to do it 10 by 10 inches by 3/4 inch. You could set that up whatever size you want. That's just going to be what we're going to use for this example. And if you want to machine it, you can set up your zero positions however you like. I'm not going to get into the toolpath sides of things in this video. This will just be focusing on how to design the project. And then down at the bottom, we are going to be doing a 3D model, so I would highly recommend setting your modeling resolution to very high. This will allow the model to be better quality. It may slow down your computer a little bit if you have a slower computer, so you can turn that down if you need to, but I would highly recommend leaving it at very high. And then if you want to change your material settings, you can. This is just strictly how the 3D model is going to appear in the 3D view. So if you want that a different material, you can. I'm just going to be using maple for this example. So let's click OK, and this will start our project. And as you can see, we are starting from scratch. There is nothing on our screen. So if you're using version 12 or above, this is going to be much easier because there's a lot of things you can do in the 3D view that you are not able to do in some of the older versions. So I would highly recommend trying out the 3D view if you're using version 12 and above. And a lot of the things I'm going to show you here, we can do entirely in the 3D view, which makes it really easy to see what you're doing with the 3D model. So if you go to your clip art tab, which you can find on the left screen, and then click on where it says clip art at the top, you're going to see many different objects that you have available in your clip art library. The main one we're going to be focusing on in this specific lesson is called domes and dishes. If you click on that folder, you're going to see some very simple shapes you have to work with here. And believe it or not, we're going to create this entire 3D model of a snowman with just what we see here. You can of course find more clip art if you wanted to really customize it. But what I just showed you at the beginning of this lesson was done entirely with what you see here. So this does require a little bit of creativity to really think of how you can take simple shapes like this and turn it into something else. So I'm going to show you how to do that in this lesson. And these are all standard clip art that comes with all of the software, either VCarve or Aspire. And you can either double click on an object to bring it into your screen, or you can click and drag it to bring it into your screen. We're going to first start out with the domes at the beginning of this list here. There are different size domes. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. The first one is more of a lower dome with a 30-degree angle, and then it goes all the way up to a larger dome with a 90-degree angle. And then all of these you can scale up and down later anyways, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose. You can just play around with each one and see which one you like the best. I'm going to go with this one here, the dome dish _60. That's a 60-degree dome. And if I double click on that, that will bring it into my screen. And you'll see it in the 2D or 3D view as long as you have your 3D model icon up at the top turned on for visibility, so that we can see our 3D objects. And now you can see it in the 3D view, and like I said, in the 2D view as well. So you can work in whichever view you like better. In the 2D view, it's going to be a grayscale image of the 3D model. And then in the 3D view, you can actually see the 3D model and the height and everything. And then you can scale it directly on the screen just by clicking and dragging from the corners. You could also scale the width or the height. We'll be looking at that later for some of the other shapes. And then there's also the total height, shape height, and base height that you can adjust by either typing in a new value here or just click and drag it up or down to change the values. So you can see there's a lot of things you can do directly in the 3D view. And then you can always undo things if you mess something up. And there's also a properties button. If you click on that, that will bring up some more properties in this menu here that we'll look at later as well. So with that said, this is our very first part of the snowman. If you ever built a snowman in real life, you'll know you always start with the bottom and you roll up a big snowball, and then you make another one for the middle and then one for the head. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to make a larger one at the bottom, and don't worry about the size too much because we can always adjust it as we go. But as you can see, I just created my first one. Now, if you want to be more organized as you're making this, every time you bring in an object, you can go to your levels at the top and you're going to see the name of the component from our clipart library. If you want to right click and then click rename, this will allow you to keep your objects organized. So later on, when you have a big long list, you're going to be able to know which one is for each part. So for this one, we can say base snowball and then click enter, or whatever you wanted to name it, you can name it there. And this is a very good practice to do to keep your list organized, because this list will get really long. Just to keep this lesson shorter, I won't go through naming each one individually, but I would highly recommend you take the time to rename each component as you are making them. It's a very good practice to do. So now that we have that one created, we can either import another one, or we can take the one we already made and just duplicate it. There's several ways you can do that. You can just right click on it and click duplicate, or what I like to do instead is hold my control key and click and drag it. And you see when you do that, it actually makes a copy. And if you also hold the Alt key, it'll keep it straight in alignment. So you know it's going to be right above it in the vertical position. And you'll see this one is going to be quite big, so we're going to have to shrink this one down. So what I like to do is hold Shift. That will keep it centered in that centered location. Then grab a corner, and then that will allow you to scale it down, but keep the centered location where it's at. And you can see from there, you can position it wherever you like. If you just want to move it up and down, you can also use your arrow keys on your keyboard. That will allow you to nudge it up and down as well. If you want to click and drag it, I would recommend holding the Alt key. That will allow you to keep it straight as you click and drag as well. So there's a couple ways you can adjust that. And as you can see, just place it wherever you like, and that will bring in the next part of our design. And like I said, at this point, you would want to drop this down, right click, rename, and keep your parts organized. But like I said, for the sake of time for this video, I won't do that for everyone, but just want to keep that habit in your mind so you can be more organized in the end. Now let's make the next component, which will be the head. And they'll be the exact same way. We'll just click on this object, hold Control and Alt and drag up, put it about where we want it. And then I'm going to hold Shift and grab a corner to keep it centered and scale it to whatever size I like. And like I said, I'm not worried about the exact sizes of things. I'm more just looking at it by eye, what I like and don't like. And like I said, later on we can change the dimensions and the scaling and everything. So don't worry too much about the size, just get it close and you can always make adjustments later. So look at that, you just made your very first simple snowman just using one single piece of clip art. Now we're gonna add more to this and make it look like a real snowman. So let's first start with the face. So we can zoom in to the top part where the head is. And if you ever built a real snowman, a lot of times you'll take some coal or a rock or something and stick it in there for the eyes. And for that, we can use a simple dome again. You can always look through your clip art on the other folders if you want to find something else, but one of these domes will work out perfectly. So you can choose whatever one you like. I'm just going to drag and drop one in here. And you'll see by default, it's going to be really large. So I'm going to scale that down, holding shift and just scale it down. And when you do that, you can see it disappeared on us. And this is where the combine modes come into play. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And if we look at these, you can see the icons are all the same there, showing us it's all the same combine mode. And if you hover over them, you can see the combine mode is merge. And these combine modes are basically how the components combine with each other. There are several different combine modes. We'll show you some examples in this lesson. This one, merge, is basically they're merging together and the highest one will show up. So if you have a shape that's lower than another piece, it's going to be hidden behind it unless you change combine mode on that. So you can either change it by right clicking it, go to combine mode, and then you'll see more combine modes in here. This one I'm going to switch to add. And now you can see the icon has changed for that one. And if we zoom back out, you can see now this is added on top. The other way you can change a combine mode is by clicking this button right here, which is our properties button. And that will show you the icons for all the different combine modes. So you can switch from here. So we have add, subtract, merge high, merge low, and multiply. For most projects, you're just going to use the first three combine modes. Those are going to be the ones we're going to use for this specific lesson. So we're going to leave this one as add, and then we're going to adjust the size of this to make it more reasonable. And of course, you can play around with that, whatever size you want and whatever placement you want. Once you get one side done, we can simply copy that over to the other side. There's several ways you can do that. You can do it like we did with the snowballs, and you can hold Control and Alt and drag over here, but it may be difficult to get the alignment just right to make it symmetrical. Another thing you can do is delete that and take this one here and mirror it to the other side. If you're going to use the mirroring technique, I would highly recommend to make sure the rest of the design is centered in our project. So what I would do is go to our design tab, go to your alignment tool in transform objects, it's the last one. And then you're going to want to choose your objects. We'll do one at a time. And we're going to do align to material left to right. So when we select an object, click on align to material left to right. That will center that in our project left to right. And we'll do that for all of those. That way, this project is centered. And if we mirror across the job center, it will make it symmetrical on both sides, nice and easily. So let's close that tool out. Now we can double check the position on this and you can move it around if you need to. And once you're happy with the position on this side, I'm going to show you a quick keyboard shortcut you can use to mirror it to the other side. I'll also show you the actual tool you can find for that. So if you want to use the keyboard shortcut, just select the object and you want to click Control, Shift, and H. And that will mirror it across the job center horizontally. And if you're going to mirror vertically, you do Control, Shift, and V for vertical. So that is a quick way to mirror it across the center. And you can see now these are both going to be symmetrical across there. And like I mentioned, if you want to do that without using the keyboard shortcut, you can simply go to your mirror tool and transform objects. It's the fourth one here. Click on that. You would select the object, make sure you click flip about job center and create a mirrored copy. And then you would click flip horizontal and that would flip it over just like we did there. So now we know these are both mirrored horizontally. And once again, every time we do something like this, you would go up here and rename all of these components to make sure everything was named nicely. I'll go ahead and quickly rename these now, and then I'll show you what that would look like. Okay, after you rename these, it would look something like this. So each component you can see has their own name. And when you click on it, you know that's going to be the component in your model. Like I said, you don't have to do that, but this makes it much more organized and easier to find things later. You'll definitely thank yourself later if you keep these named nice and organized, because it could get really messy. Okay, now we have the eyes. Let's work on the nose. Once again, we can just select one of these objects, and I can just hold Control and drag it down here to make a nose. And if we want to use our alignment tool, we can align it left to right to make sure it's nice and centered. You can leave it like this, or if you want to use your scale tool, you can go ahead and scale that up. You can see you can make it really large if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that because it's going to be harder to carve. So you can decide how large you want to make it. You can do something like that. And that was just by simply clicking and dragging on this tool for the total shape height, which is that one there. So you can play around with that to make it whatever size you like. And you can see that looks pretty realistic, and I think that looks really good. Now let's work on the mouth part. Once again, the mouth could be simply made with the domes that we used earlier for the eyes. So instead of bringing in them again and changing combine mode again, we can just take one of the eyes, hold Control, drag it down here for the mouth, and place it wherever you think is correct. And then you can play around with the sizing on this as well. So this is the parts where you can get really creative. I'm gonna make it a medium size, hold Control and drag over here, and then maybe make another size for this one. And each one I'm gonna make a little bit custom for the size. Kind of make it vary a little bit. And then the last one, we can make it a little bit smaller. And you can decide how many of these you want to put here and how often you want to put them. So you can get really creative with this. I'm going to do something like this and then just adjust the layout however you like. And once again, once you do one side, you can hold Shift, select all three of them in this case, and either use the mirror tool like I showed you or Control Shift H, and that will mirror it horizontally to the other side. And you can see there's a little bit of a gap in the middle. So if I want to fix that, I can use my arrow keys to nudge it over and place it wherever I like. And then if I want to make them symmetrical again, I'll just delete one side and then select the other side, click Control Shift H again, and that will mirror it again horizontally. So that looks pretty good. And like I said, you can spend as much time on that as you like to make it look however you like. But just doing the simple domes like that and playing around with their sizes and locations, you can really get custom with that. And look at that. We still only use one single clip art object to make this entire shape so far. We didn't use anything extra. So as you can see, this is really powerful just with that one single piece of clip art. By the way, if you're enjoying this tutorial and you want to go deeper into VCarve and Aspire, this is exactly the kind of stuff we do every single week inside of my live Vectric Group Training Community. We do brand new live Vectric lessons every week. Plus, we do weekly live Q&As where you can hop on and ask your questions directly to me. And if you can't make it live, we already got over 250 project lesson replay videos waiting for you inside of the library. We also run monthly CNC project challenges with awesome prizes, and we built an amazing private community of CNC users all sharing tips, projects, and helping each other out. It's honestly one of the best parts of the whole program. So if you like more tutorials like this and you want to learn Vectric faster, you can check out the community by scanning the QR code on the screen or find the link down below in the description. Let's get back to the video. So let's see what else we can do with some more clip art. We're gonna go back to our clip art library. Let's put some arms onto the snowman. So for that, I'm gonna be using what's called the flat rectangles. There's a couple different options in here. I'm gonna use this skinnier one. So I'm gonna just drag and drop that in here. Once again, it's gonna be quite large when you bring it in. So you can scale it down however you like. You can even just adjust the height or the width of it. And then you can also click on this button here to adjust the angle. And you can make it look a little bit more realistic, however you like. It's not gonna look exactly like a natural looking stick. It's gonna be pretty flat and straight. So that's a limitation with VCarve. Like I mentioned earlier, our Aspire version of this, you can see you can make much more natural looking, because Aspire has a lot more custom tools you can do, whereas VCarve, you're kind of limited to the actual clip art objects and what you have available to you already. But that's no problem, we can still get creative with this. So there is a simple shape, and then from this, we can make little branches coming off of that. So once again, I'm just going to hold Control and drag to make a copy of this, and then just take this copy and adjust it for the size. So I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to shrink it for the height as well. I'm going to rotate it a bit by clicking this rotate and drag, and then I'm going to place it up here, and then you can adjust the height. So you can adjust the shape height, the base height, or anything you like there. And you can adjust that up and down. I wouldn't bring it up above the other one. I would just put it slightly below the other one. Something like that, and adjust the location. So you can see that looks really good. And then once I have one, I can make a copy of that and make another. So I'm just gonna hold Control and drag again, and then just rotate this for the other one. You can also mirror that if you wanted to, and then it would just look something like that. And you can see that's a simple arm that you can make on the snowman. And if you want to make them both symmetrical, you can mirror all three of these to the other side, or you can make another set on the other side that would not be symmetrical and make it look a little more realistic. So that's totally up to you. Just for the sake of time, I'm just going to select those, click Control Shift H, and that will mirror it across to the other side. And look at that, we got more of a snowman looking so far. Now that we have that done, we can add some more stuff to it. So let's add some buttons on the front of the snowman. For these buttons, I'm going to make them look something like this. That looks like a real button. And this may look complex to you, but it's actually really simple to make. And once again, we're going to be using our favorite piece of clip art, the dome shape. And that's the only thing we're going to use to make this entire button shape. And you're going to be blown away how easy this is to make. So let's go back into VCarve. And actually, this will not be the dome shape. This is actually going to be this flat round shape. You can see this more resembles a actual button shape. So I'm going to use that one instead of the dome. So we're going to take that flat round shape. I'm going to drag and drop that in our project. It's always going to come out really large. So before we add this to the actual project, I'm going to build it off to the side just to show you what we're going to do here to make this look like a button. I can even make it pretty large just so you can see it a little easier, and then we can shrink it down later. So first off, we have this flat round shape, and what we're going to do is turn this into a button shape. So with one of these created already, I'm going to right click on this and click duplicate. That will make a copy of it, and there'll be two of them right on top of each other. That second one, I'm going to shrink down a little bit. So I'm going to hold Shift, grab one of these corners, and shrink it down. And it's going to be a little bit hard to tell what size we're making that. So at this point, I'm going to change the combine mode. Like I said, you can either select the properties button or drop down our levels at the top and right click on that one we're working on. I'm going to switch the combine mode to be subtract. So click on that option, and you'll see when I do that, it actually will subtract from the shape that is connected to. So now it has that indent in the middle. And now with that created, we can hold Shift and drag this down, and this will allow you to see what size that looks like a little bit better. And you can see that looks pretty good. So that will allow you to customize that. Now with that created, we're going to put the 4 holes in the middle for the button as well. So for those, I'm going to take that subtract component we just made, right click on that, duplicate it again, and once again it's going to copy it right on top of the other one. So I'm going to shrink the size of that down, and you'll see that one, and we can just move that where it needs to be. And you can also adjust the height of that, which will adjust how deep it goes into the shape. And look at that, that's starting to look like a really realistic button. And once we have one of those created, we're going to create 4 of those. So I'm going to hold Control and Alt key, and I'm going to drag that over here. And then you could do that again. You can hold Shift, grab both of them, hold Control and Alt, and drag them down here. And look at that. That is a simple button shape. If you want to make sure those are nice and centered in there, you can also select all 4, holding Shift, and then click the letter G to group those together. Now those will group all together. With that group selected, hold Shift and select the outer ring, and then go to your Design tab, go to the Alignment tool, and for this one, you're going to want to do Align to Selection. So it's going to center in the last item that we selected, which was the outer ring. And you're going to choose this one here to center it left to right and top to bottom. So I'm going to select that, and you'll see that centers it in there. Click Close, and look at that. We got a nice button shape. And of course, this is really large. We're going to scale it down. Also, what I'm going to do is group all of this together. You can see when I group those 4 holes together, it actually created this group here that we can collapse. So that's pretty cool. And what that allows us to do is select one of them and make sure they don't get separated. But I also want to select all this other stuff for the button and group it all together. So if you hold shift and select all those objects for the button, you're going to see those in here. You can either click the letter G to group those all together, or in your component tree, you can right click and click group. And that will group all that stuff together. And you can now collapse that group and rename the group title as button. And now we have a single component with a bunch of components inside of it. So all of that is our button. So now that we have that button created, we can now select it as a group and then double click on it to move it, and look at that, it all moves together. So now we can place it onto our snowman. But as you can see, when we move this to go on top of the snowman, it is not going on top, it is merging together. So once again, we have to go to our component tree, and we have to change the combine mode of this by right clicking, go to combine mode, we're going to set it to add. And when we set it to add, it's going to add on top of the snowman, as you can see right here. Now when we move it on there, you can see it's adding on top. So all we have to do now is resize it. We're going to scale it down and then place it wherever you like. And you can decide the size and shape of this however you like. And if you want to get more precise with this, you can select that button, hold shift, select the body, and then go to the alignment tool and align it centered to make sure it's nice and centered into that object. And then once we have one, it's really easy to create some more. So once again, I'm just going to double click on this, hold Control and Alt and drag up to make one copy, and then drag down to make another copy. And of course, you can use other tools like the array copy tool if you wanted to get the spacing nice and even, or after you make these copies, you can select them, go to the alignment tool, and there is an alignment at the bottom here to space them evenly vertically. And you click on that, they will all space evenly. And then you can group them together again and then align them in the center of the project again as well. So however you want to do that, but as you can see, we got some cool looking buttons that were made with one single piece of clip art. It's amazing how much things you can make with just one simple piece of clip art like that. So I highly recommend you play around with this clip art and get creative with it. You'll be surprised what you can actually make with it. So now that we have that done, let's add some more things to this. We can add in a scarf, and we're also going to add in a hat at the top. Let's do the scarf next. For the scarf, I'm going to use another dome component. And that may seem kind of weird that we're going to use a dome for the scarf, but trust me with this, I'm going to take the component that we use for the head, and I'm just going to hold Control and drag that to copy it. And to make the scarf, I'm just going to shrink this for the height. And you can see it squashes this. And then I'm going to move that over here, right where the scarf should be, and then just adjust the height by clicking and dragging that. And look at that. That looks like a scarf. It's very simple and easy to do. It only took probably 2 seconds to do that. So as you can see, it's really simple to make a shape like that. It looks very complex, but when you do something like that, you'll be surprised how actually easy it is to do. Now, if you want to add a little drop down from that scarf, let's take one of these fingers over here. This is a flat shape. I'm going to hold Control and drag that over here. Before I get it hidden behind this shape, you can see we have to change the combine mode. So I'm going to drop down our properties and just switch the combine mode on this to be add. So I'm going to click add and then click close, and you'll see now this will add on top. And then with this, I'm just going to adjust the angle and adjust the overall size so we can scale this however big or small you like this to be. Now, here comes a problem. This is a big common problem people will face where one shape is adding to another that we want it to merge, but if we set this to merge, then we're going to lose it behind this other shape. So that gets really complicated when things like that happen. And it all comes down to what order we have these in our component tree. You can see this shape here. If I select it, you can see it's all the way down here because I copied it from our head. I'm gonna right click on that and rename it. This is why it's really important to have the names, because right now you can see this list is not very organized at the moment, and because I made a bunch of copies, and it's gonna be easier to work with if this was all named correctly. So that's why I recommend naming these when you're making these 3D models. So let's rename this as scarf. And then this one here, we can drop down and find it up here. We can rename that one as well by right clicking on it. Okay, so now we have our two components, this one and this one. So let's move those together. I'm just gonna click and drag it down the list, and that will put them right together. And if we take a closer look at this, you can see we have this scarf drop piece and the scarf. We put them together in the list, and you can see one is set to merge, one is set to add. This one is set to add on top of this middle snowball. That's the one we want to add on top of. And the list of this order really matters, because right now it's also adding on anything that's below this list. So all we have to do is take that piece and drop it below the scarf, and look at that, it just fixed itself right there. Now it's only adding on top of what's below it. Really, it only needs to be adding on top of the middle snowball. So that's the order we need it to be in. And then anything above that is going to merge together with it. So you can see that just fixed our issue that we had. Now, if we look at this, that looks much better and much more realistic. And then from here, we can adjust this as needed for the height or anything you want to adjust it for. And you see that looks much better. Okay, so with that created, let's look at making a top hat. And to do that, once again, we can steal a shape we already made, like this scarf. I'm gonna hold Control and just drag that up here. And then I'm gonna make some adjustments. I'm gonna make the hat slightly tilted. So I'm gonna add a little angle to this just by clicking and dragging. And then what you can do is adjust the position and adjust the scaling if you need to make the height or anything different. And you can see that would be the brim part of the hat. Now we just need to make the top part of the hat. So for that, I'm gonna go back to our clipart library. I'm gonna go into one more folder that has a lot more powerful things you can use as well. And that is the 3D tabs folder, which you can find right here at the top. And in this folder, there's a lot of cool shapes that you can use for all different types of things. For the top hat, we're gonna use this circular shape here. There's a couple different sizes you can use. Don't worry too much about the size. You can always scale it like we showed earlier. I'm gonna use the larger one for this one. So I'm gonna drag and drop that in here. We're gonna adjust the rotation to match our hat. And then we're just going to adjust the size. So I'm gonna scale this bigger, and then we can scale it for the width. And then once you get it in position, you can adjust the angle however you need. You can adjust the height. So look at that, it looks really realistic. And then you can scale that up or down, and look at that. That looks like a real hat. And of course you can adjust that however you need to. But look at this. For this particular 3D model, we used 1, 2, 3, 4 total pieces of clip art. And we just adjusted their sizes and positions. And look at that. We made a pretty cool 3D model. And from this, we can combine it with other pieces of clip art. We could carve it as is. We could take another dish shape. So for example, if we go to the dish shape again, and let's just choose a really large dish, and then we can make it much bigger, and then we can change the combine mode to be subtract, and then we just need to adjust the snowman to fit inside. And then of course you want to adjust the shape height so it's not too deep, and then you can carve this into a dish inside of your material. So if you want to carve it below the surface, you can do that. You'll just need to adjust this together. Also, when you get the entire snowman done, you can group it all together so it can all be moved together. So for example, if I select the top part, which was the hat, that was the last part that we made, and hold Shift and select the bottom part of our list, that's going to select all of the components in between. And then if I just right click and click group, that will group it all together. I can now collapse it and then right click on this and rename it and just name it snowman. Click enter, and look at that. Now everything has been grouped together in that one single component. If I drop that down, you can see all of the shapes that we used. And then if I collapse that, here is the dish that we just entered in there. Now that this is all grouped together, we can select that all as one, scale it down as needed, and adjust it and put it into our project. So as you can see, that is a very cool way to make a snowman. And you can see I accidentally changed the combine mode there. So it does really matter which combine mode you're set to. Make sure we leave that as add to add on top of that dish, and that looks pretty darn cool. All right, that's it for this one. Now, you saw earlier one of the more detailed versions of the snowman that I modeled in Aspire. If you want me to make a full Aspire tutorial on that version, drop a comment below and let me know. I'll keep an eye on the comments, and if enough people want it, I'll make it happen. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel way more than you think, and it lets me keep making more CNC and Vectric tutorials for you. Thanks for watching, and if you want to keep learning, go ahead and click on the next one of my videos that just popped up on your screen.